Does that make your characters do things that they normally wouldn't or shouldn't do?
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
We can fight this dragon. The healer's got us. Meanwhile, the cleric's sitting there going, the what now?
Nowadays, like, when it comes to multi-classing, they'll pretty much, as long as you meet a prerequisite for the stats, they'll basically let you do whatever you want. I think, when I look at multi-classing rules for 5e, it's basically like, yeah, you can take this as long as, like, you have a 13 in intelligence. Do you have a 13 in intelligence? Yes, you can do it. You just start taking levels in that. Okay.
Yay, bloody wilds.
Oh, that sounds like Cocaine Bear all over again. Let's make that. I'm gonna
make my next druid be a Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, I want my druid to just be Cocaine Bear now.
And since you can pick their appearance, yeah, it's just
got
this white line underneath his nose.
White line underneath it. Perfect. Let's do that. Okay, so Alex, have you gotten up and rolled for initiative?
Not in the last 24 to 30 days.
Oh, well, that's a long time to go without any initiative.
Yeah, you should see the bed sores.
So, thank you for joining us on Total Pebble Knockdown, now with 100% more bed sores. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Alex.
And on this episode, it's a whole lot of D&D. It's an oops all D&D episode, for the most part at least. So let's just get right into it. We had a little crit think I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And basically, I saw something on Reddit, which seems
As one does.
It seems to they keep coming over my feed all the time. And it was an interesting question that I wanted to address. So the question is, my party doesn't have a healer. I've run a couple of one-shots before, but I'm still pretty new to being a DM. My friends and I just had a session 0 for an actual campaign. The party has a barbarian, bard, monk, and a rogue. I'm a little concerned about them not having a dedicated healer. Any advice on what to do? So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and the idea of dedicated healers, and do you even need them in relation to
the short answer is no.
Okay. What's the long answer?
The long answer is a bit longer than that.
Well, that's how long answers work, Alex.
So I know there was a comment to that you had shared also about how bards can heal. I think monks can heal.
There's a healing subclass for monks. Bards do actually have like a couple different healing abilities, not just healing word, but you can use their Song of Rest. Song of Rest is an ability they have during downtime. And other than that, and actually for that matter, I think that even the barbarian and the rogue could get some limited healing abilities depending on the subclasses that they use.
Maybe the rogue, but I don't think the barbarian's gonna usually have a lot of magic use at all.
I thought that there was one
maybe
subclass.
Maybe a self heal for them, but not like I don't think they have a heal other type ability usually. The short answer is no. You in RPGs, TTRPGs, you don't really need a dedicated healer. Part of the reason for this, in my belief, is that your party shouldn't have to prioritize. Like, I've played games where you've had the atypical party composition of your tank, your healer, and your damage dealers. Yeah. But I believe those the idea of that being an ideal party format came from video games.
Yeah, it might have come from the times of like Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale or something.
Yeah, and that's a very different thing where you can actually have, your tank can pull and hold aggro.
Yeah.
On things. So instead of like, there's nobody directing where the monsters go, they use their AI. So they use the aggro to see who they attack.
Yeah.
So in a video game, that's fine. The tank needs to, like in World of Warcraft, your tank needs to be able to pull threat, and DPS causes high threat. So you need to be able to have your tank who can take the monsters and make them attack them instead. That's the tank's role.
Right.
In a TTRPG, that's not really how that works in a lot of cases. Depending on the types of enemies you're fighting, if you have smart enemies, they're probably going to go for a caster or someone that looks like an easy target first.
Sure.
And if you're playing against feral enemies or not very intelligent enemies, they're probably just going to go by whatever they think is the biggest threat, or the closest thing to them at points. In those cases, I feel like a tank can fulfill that role. But the question is specifically about dedicated healers. And I think the trick there is, as with the game I played with David and Bo, there was a bard and a druid. Neither of us were dedicated healers. We both had a few healing spells.
Okay.
And we would use them when we needed to. But the big thing there, especially being a party of two, was that you need to, as a party, know when to get the hell out of there.
Sometimes it's just better to run away anyway.
Yeah, which is a lesson some parties need to learn.
And actually, if you think about it, if you have a dedicated healer, people will likely not run away because they're going to figure that the healer's just going to keep on healing. And it's like, not everyone can have a life domain cleric in their party that just does that. And a lot of people don't want to play even a cleric that way, and I don't blame them because there's a lot more interesting subclasses than that.
There's a life domain cleric is like yes, I would like to play a dedicated healer. My story is that I healed the sick. I mean, you can make very interesting role-playing choices with that, but it's not as interesting as other domains or other classes. Yes, I want to play something easy, a healer. It's like, okay, you can do that if you'd like to, but there are tons of other things you can be, like a monk. Maybe you Wayward Soul Monk or whatever, the monks that have some healing abilities, or paladin. Paladins can heal.
Oh yeah.
But they are also very different than a cleric.
Yes.
Which I feel like if you wanted to do that, a cleric who's focused on healing instead of combat, and that would be more interesting. But clerics have access to a ton of different deities and domains and ways to play that. It'd be almost a shame if someone were to use a cleric as the dedicated healer in a party.
If you wanted to, I think you could pretty much take any of the classes from D&D, if we're talking about D&D, and you could try and give them some kind of limited ability to be a healer of some sort. Even if you're like a barbarian or a fighter, and you wanted to take a feat like you were doing like a magic initiate or something like that, and it was for cleric, and you wanted to take one first level cleric spell that was specifically a healing spell. You technically can do that.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be an odd choice in my opinion. I definitely have a character I made that has a level 1 wizard spell, which you met my character when we played. And he was a ranger that had a wizard's familiar.
Yeah.
But like a single use of a single spell from another class?
Yeah.
Very limited in use.
Very limited.
Especially it's a first level spell. So a fighter with a first level cleric healing spell?
The only reason I can think about it is like if you had a field medic character, but they didn't.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
They were a frontline fighter, but they had a med kit on them. Just
in that case, I would say you would almost do like a profession, field medic or medic.
Yeah.
So they maybe they don't have any magic, but they are really good at like setting wounds and closing wounds and all that stuff that a paramedic would have.
I think that there's actually a medic feat so that you can use like healing kits that makes like even characters that have no natural healing ability, if they can use healing kits, they actually do quite well at that. There's also, I was just looking through best healing subclasses here. There's a warlock, a celestial patron warlock.
There's also a sorcerer who can heal.
Yeah, divine soul, I'm guessing, is what you're talking about. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think a healing warlock would be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The majority of them on here are different cleric subclasses, but yet we have Circle of Dreams druid on here.
Even just a normal druid could do healing pretty well if they wanted to.
That's true. Alchemist for an artificer.
Sure.
Which isn't the kind of artificer I would want to play, but still kind of cool.
You're gonna have a hard time with the rogue with the fighter and barbarian, I think, if you wanted to turn them into healers, unless you did like field medics or something, but
What if you
I'm sure there's still ways you can do it.
What if you took like Arcane Trickster?
Unless
have
they get
limited
access to
ability.
like the bard spell list,
But you know,
and then
the bard
and then
spell
they would
list
only-
is every spell.
I mean, to a point, but I mean, Arcane Trickster,
I know.
usually I think they're more illusion
Yeah.
oriented, so.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even know. Blood Hunter has an Order of the Profane Soul, which apparently can do some healing as well. I'm not familiar with Blood Hunters. At some point, we'll have to get into those because it's an interesting class. But there's a bunch of different ways that you can do a workaround, and I don't know about you, but I feel like it's actually not particularly beneficial either from a role-playing standpoint or even a tactical standpoint where you're trying to gauge the difficulty of a situation to even have a dedicated healer. You're always on the assumption that you can handle any problem because the healer is going to just keep you in the game,
Yeah.
and that's
Where-
weird.
I mean, support characters are fine. It's good to have a support character. Bards are great support characters. Clerics can be amazing support characters. Druids can be incredible support characters as well. All the buffs that you can give them. Not just healing. But, like, just focusing on heals is kind of reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you could be, say, even a wizard would be a great support character if you're like, hey, I'm an abjuration wizard.
Yeah.
Here, have Eagle's Splendor.
Yeah.
You know, have bonuses to all the things. Actually, I think that's enhancement or enchantment, not abjuration. But, you know, wizard throwing out shield spells, throwing out bonuses to strength, dex, you know, damage rolls. You know, having a wizard as a support character instead of your cleric, I think would be vastly more interesting than a dedicated healer.
I mean, they obviously say life domain clerics are the best healing subclass, but
Sure.
the one that they do put on here, it's like, well, yeah, they're great for everything, is the peace domain clerics. At some point, maybe we'll go over them. They feel like one of the most broken subclasses of the entire game, but
Yeah.
here, let's just give giant bonuses to everybody's saving throws. Here you go.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So the long answer to that is that dedicated healer, you don't need one, you shouldn't need one, and I don't think you should rely on one.
'Cause that's the other part of this, is if you're going to rely on a support character, does that make your characters do things that they normally wouldn't or shouldn't do?
Oh, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
We can fight this dragon, the healer's got us. Meanwhile, the cleric's sitting there going, the what now?
No, you're gonna be fine, right? You're gonna sit there, and you're just gonna keep healing us while we go and attack the dragons, like...
The role-playing option there is, we slayed a dragon. They'd be like, oh, yeah, what'd you do? And each person's telling their story, and they get to the cleric, and he's like, what'd you do? And it's like, I healed everybody
Cast a
from
lot
the
of-
burns.
Yeah, I cast a lot of healing spells. Basically, I was a giant vial of extra life points that I gave to everybody. And that's not that much fun. I've played with clerics. They don't always have that ability, and you have to be aware that if somebody is playing a cleric, they might not be there to be the healer of the group.
I think you should discuss with them beforehand or in character in game when you go, hey, I'm a cleric, and people go, oh, you're a healer, and you can be like, actually, no, I communicate with the dead to make sure their souls pass on to the correct place. So I'm not going to heal you, but if you die, I'll make sure you go to the right deity.
Yeah. The cleric that I played with in Dom's campaign, I don't think Mina ever actually used a healing spell, or it was very, very sparing. Most of the time, she was turning people to stone.
Yeah, that's definitely an easier way to deal with things.
Yeah, and smiting people. like there was a lot of offense that was going into the clerics because they are very good at that, even though we don't talk about it. They're very good at offensive spellcasting. I don't think I would necessarily want to play that kind of character anyway as a dedicated healer, and I think you'd have to have a very specific person who wants to play that character.
Yes.
Because it does kind of limit your character development and their strengths and their flexibility when it comes to different situations. If you have a life domain cleric, for instance, you know the one thing you do. The one thing you do is basically heal hit points and status effects, maybe. You know, that's pretty much it. In any other case, you're not going to have as much functionality, and people are going to assume that you can't really do much in those. You're not going to be asked if you're doing an investigation, what are your thoughts on the matter? If you're going to get into like a one-on-one combat, no one's picking you. It's just going to be a slog. But I guess I would pass the question on to everybody else about, do you need a dedicated healer at all? And I think for us, the answer is nah. I don't think you do. But tell us why we're wrong. Lord knows that you will. I've learned that much. All right, so Alex, a couple weeks back, I mentioned that it's just weird that we never talk about D&D.
Bruno?
Bruno? No, I used to talk about Bruno all the time when the movie came out. You'll remember that.
Yeah.
A whole segment on it. But
yeah, we had to edit it because someone left way too many parts of that song in and it got slapped.
Which I don't understand because it was like all under 5 seconds, but whatever. Just a couple weeks ago, I was mentioning that we don't talk much about D&D 3E because we mostly talk about 3.5. And then not a lot of people talk about 4, but then we talk about 5. It's like 3.5 and 5 are the most discussed D&Ds that are really out there. You didn't really play edition 3. You played 3.5, correct?
Yeah, I didn't really play any 3.
Okay.
I think it started in 3.5, so.
Okay. And you hadn't played earlier versions?
No, I had not.
Okay, so really 3.5 was your entry point.
Yeah.
And I can understand why a lot of people feel that way, because if you think about it, so 3rd edition was released in the year 2000. In the year 2000. And then 3.5 came out in 03. So there was only a 3-year period between when 3rd launched and when we get 3.5 rules.
Yeah.
So there is a very small window. By comparison, 3.5 was there for a long time. Even 4 was there for 6 years or something. Earlier versions, way longer than even that. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of look back a little bit about what 3E actually did in a delving deeper. I watched some videos and I looked at a couple different threads about it, and I thought I would just talk a little bit about what it actually did in terms of what it changed from AD&D, and essentially I think why 3.5 ended up getting picked up afterward. So a few basic notes. Some things that 3E actually did over earlier versions. We got the return of both the half-orc and the monk class. They came back. They had been dropped.
Half-orc class?
No, half-orc as a race and monk as a subclass.
Sorry, well, you said half-orc and monk class. I was
sorry.
I didn't know the half-orc was a class.
Sorry. I know that in earlier versions there were, elf was a class or something. But,
yeah.
But half-orc came back as a race that you could play, and a monk came back as a class that you could play, which were not in the previous edition. So that came back. This was also the edition where barbarians and sorcerers were introduced. So they were not around before this
before 3.5?
3.
Oh,
third
sorry.
Third edition. Third edition added those two as subclasses, which are
just
ubiquitous. Yeah. No, we're talking about 3E specifically right now.
Okay.
Just talking about what third edition added. This was also the new skill point system that was not just proficiency rules from 2E. And you're probably familiar with that skill system, because that didn't change much from 3 to 3.5. But the idea that you actually had points that you could put into individual skills. See, we don't really have that in 5, but No. Yeah, I enjoyed it in 3 and 3.5. Skill points were fine. Proficiency bonus that we have in 5 is a lot easier, of course. Yes. But this was the point where really all of your skills really determined what you could do. And that's a very interesting idea. I do actually like that, because you get to choose some different things that you think you're going to be better at. This was also where they put in some new multi-classing rules. Because in previous editions, you had to decide at the beginning of character creation what you were multi-classing into. And this time, you just had to meet the prerequisites. So, like, you had to have a strength that was high enough, some of them where you had to have specific feats or classes or something in order to get prestige classes, etc. But this is really where they made the multi-classing rules a little bit easier, so you didn't have to do that all up at the front when you built the character to start. Prestige classes, that was also something that came in 3E. I don't really think we do that now in 5.
No, they kind of did away with that. I don't know if they were in 4 at all, but they're not really a thing in 5. Your character just retires at level 20.
They just retire at level 20, yeah. And
do you know much about prestige classes?
I know a little bit from when I was doing the research, but my understanding is that if you have certain prerequisites, you can start going along a specific line that's like in addition to the class that you're in. Is that what?
Yeah, so some prerequisites were like the ability to cast certain level spells of a certain type, like arcane or divine. Maybe it was a feat as a prerequisite, or a race as a prerequisite for like a dwarven defender.
Right.
But essentially it was just kind of not a full class typically. It was either 5 or 10 levels usually. Sure. That would give you different abilities and skills and like magic or whatnot. For instance, one of my favorite ones was the Rage Mage.
Rage Mage.
And this was, you had to both be able to cast spells of a certain level and have the Rage class feature.
Oh, okay.
Because back then, barbarians could not cast magic.
Oh.
Like, you cannot use magic while you're raged. So basically, barbarians could not use magic. Rage Mage was a specific prestige class that allowed barbarians to use magic while they were raging.
Great.
Yeah, terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah, I don't like that at all. So was that something that you had to do after you reached level 20 and you wanted to take additional
No,
classes?
you could do them whenever you met the prerequisites.
Oh, okay. Whenever you meet the prerequisites.
One of the other things with multi-classing in 3 and probably 3.5, probably 3, I know in 3.5, was that if you were multi-classing, you had to keep them pretty close in level.
Okay.
Or you got an XP penalty.
Oh, okay.
So if you went like 1 level in one and then 7 in another, if you wanted to keep leveling, I don't remember the specifics, but there was a bit of an XP penalty for you.
Nowadays, like when it comes to multi-classing, they'll pretty much, as long as you meet a prerequisite for the stats, they'll basically let you do whatever you want. I think when I look at multi-classing rules for 5e, it's basically like, yeah, you can take this as long as, like, you have a 13 in intelligence. Do you have a 13 in intelligence? Yes, you can do it. You just start taking levels in that. Okay. Much less restrictive now. But there are really 2 big things that 3e introduced. One of them was the actual D20 system, because they've used D20s before, but this was everything. Ability checks to attacks, all done with a D20, and higher was better. And in previous systems, you didn't really know if rolling low or high was what you wanted to achieve here. You didn't know if it was good if I got like a 1 on the die, or if I got the highest value on the die, because it changed depending on what you were doing. But this is where they standardized it. D20s for like all of your stuff, your assorted stuff, and it is better if you get a higher number. Much easier to understand, and in congruity with that, they also established the Open Gaming License.
Which they just recently...
There was a whole to-do about it, but sounds like we actually have an OGL2 essentially now, but this is where the original Open Gaming License came in, where third-party developers could use that D20 system in order to make subsequent content for D&D. Those were the 2 really big things that happened in 3E. And I was trying to get just like a basic list of some of the changes that took place there, and I couldn't find so much of a video, but I was able to find someone who gave a pretty comprehensive list from their experience. 3.5 ended up making a lot of tweaks to character classes. They started to do a lot with skill changes and feats that were changed. And I thought I would give you a few because since you didn't play 3, you might be interested in a few of these. I'll see if I'll tell you.
I know there was one that had to do with a typo on a weapon in the description of it, saying it did 1d63.
Oh.
It was a weapon. I think it was the sap.
I thought you were talking about the wizard instead of damage, where they did the autocorrect change.
No, it was. I think it was the sap. Instead of doing 1d6 damage, it did 1d63.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can explain to you some of your favorite classes. And, okay,
sure.
Druid. So, Druid animal companions advance as the Druid levels up now, making the Druid more playable. Druids were given more access to more spells than before. So, kind of limited, and that's not how companion characters Rangers received a hit die increase, more skill points, favored enemy, and animal companion also received large revisions for the class, which may say making it playable. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the Ranger currently in 5e has an animal companion anymore.
Depending on the subclass that you take, because there is.
I don't know.
One.
They did away with the animal companions largely.
I think there's one that's like a warden class where you get one specifically. Clerics were then allowed to spontaneously cast Cure and inflict spells of the mass variety. Couldn't do that before. So there's something. Sorcerers allowed to make small revisions to their spells known when they level up, which we still can do in 5e now. Wizard spells specialization was changed, familiar stat bonuses were changed as well. This is where I thought it was really interesting though, skill changes. This is neat. So alchemy was rolled into craft alchemy. Animal empathy was removed from the game, and instead Ranger and Druid now get the skill as a class ability. Innuendo, which before was used to covertly pass messages along, was rolled into the bluff skill.
There you go. Perfect. We don't need that as its own skill.
We don't need innuendo. Intuit direction was rolled into survival as a skill. Perform was rolled into its own skill, which works similar to craft and profession skills. Read lips was removed from the game and rolled into spot. Ride is no longer specific to different mount types. I'm thinking about that. Wait, did they make ride specific to the kind of mount that you wanted to use? Okay.
They might have.
Apparently they did. Pickpocket, that got rolled into sleight of hand. Scry was removed and now only relies on the spell. Wilderness lore was rolled into survival. Also feat changes. So expertise was renamed to combat expertise. Ambidextrous and two-weapon fighting were rolled into each other so that two-weapon fighting provides the benefits of both feats. Shield expert was rolled into the feat improved shield bash. The feat improved critical was changed to not allow stacking with other critical range enhancing spells. And then when it came to spell changes, ton were added.
Probably don't need to go over all of them. Maybe some notable ones if there are some.
Won't. Let me see if I can give you some that are probably the more useful ones. Acid Splash was added to the game. We had a lot of greater and mass sort of ones, like Cure Moderate Wounds got a mass version, Cure Critical Wounds. Basically, a lot of these are mass. Also, like Longstrider, Mordenkainen's Prime Sanctum, Owl Wisdom. We also had some that were changed or removed. So for instance, like Animal Friendship and Emotions. Emotion, hate, or friendship, or fear apparently got removed.
Okay.
And you had some basic name changes, like Charm Person or Animal became Charm Animal. Circle of Doom became Inflict Light Wounds. There's a few different things that they did. Also just damage reduction changes. It was changed to allow different things to bypass damage reduction, like special materials, silver adamantine.
Yep, silver adamantine, cold iron.
Some equipment changes. I don't have to go over all of that. They made a lot of changes to 3.5 to try and make it much simpler and more cohesive than 3 was. so that it was easier to understand and more comprehensive. And I think that's why they came out with 3.5 as quickly as they did, and why we don't talk about 3E as much. Because when it comes down to it, I even saw one, I was going to watch a video where they were like, we're going to make a 3E character sheet. And it's like, great, show me the 3E character sheet. And as soon as they started talking, it was like, well, actually a 3.5E character sheet because nobody uses 3. And it's like, thanks. I guess
because they had innuendo in there.
Yeah, it had innuendo in there. Exactly. I was just always kind of curious as to why 3 never gets brought up in the conversation, because, I mean, they did do a lot of important things with that edition that would translate across, further editions. But I think it got surpassed so quickly by 3.5, and then 3.5 was used for so long.
Yeah, and then 4 was not.
Yeah, people still use 3.5 after 4 was out, and a lot of people didn't even convert over until 5th edition to move away from 3.5, and a lot of people still play 3.5, but you don't
And a lot of people switch straight to Pathfinder.
I hope that kind of gives a little bit of clarity for anybody who was interested in it, like I was, to kind of give an idea of why we just don't talk about Bruno or 3E anymore, for that matter.
Copyright.
Yeah, copyright, exactly. The OGL. We need an open gaming license for Bruno. We move now from 3rd edition to 1D&D test material.
There you go.
From the past all the way to the future. Wizards has put together some test material that is actually going to be going for feedback very shortly when you hear this episode. And this time they are discussing the classes of druids and paladins. And on this episode, we were going to focus a little bit on the druids and how they are looking to work in 1D&D. Are you ready to get on your mechanics hat,
I'm
Alex?
ready to see how Hephaestus will be altered.
Okay, excellent. So the first thing is, I think we mentioned this in other ones, they're trying to put everything into classes. So druids are considered a priest class, along with clerics, and actually I think paladins are now falling into that as well.
What were the 3 classes again?
I will tell you. So there's actually 4 classes. Okay, so there's the experts. So those are the bards, rangers, and rogues. Those are like the polymaths. They get expertise. You have mages, so that's the sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Priests, that's the clerics, druids, and paladins. And then you have the warriors, barbarians, fighters, and monks. Essentially like specialization things for roles that you might perform.
Yes.
But anyway, your base druid is getting 1d8 per druid level for hit dice.
That's normal.
Constitutions are all pretty much the same. Your proficiencies are going to be intelligence and wisdom saving throws, and you get to choose 2 skills, so like arcana, animal handling, insight, medicine, nature, the stuff. You can use simple weapons, and you have herbalism kit as a tool proficiency.
Yes.
And you get your quarterstaff essentially, and your leather armor, and you're off to the races for the most part.
Yeah, I assume the equipment kit is based on if you're taking that, so
So this is something true of like all of the classes that they've been showing. Either you can take the initial loadout that they give you, or you can forgo it all and you can just take this 50 gold pieces and spend it on whatever equipment that you want. So
depending on what you're doing for a druid, 50 gold might be better along the way for you.
I think that's a good framing, though, too, for players that are either new to the hobby or returning, because I think a lot of new people would just look at it and kind of go, I'll just take the basic loadout because I don't know what I'm doing. But if you're experienced, you now also have an option. Level 1. Here we go. Channel Nature. Okay. Magic of nature infuses you. Tapping into the power, you can create various magical effects. You start with 1 that you might be aware of. Wild Shape. Which is described below, although I will tell you, Wild Shape is going to sound very different than what it was before when I get into this. Other druid effects features include additional Channel Nature effect, which you can use Channel Nature twice. Each time you use it, you can choose an effect to create from among the classes that you have. We'll get into that in a minute, but let's talk about Wild Shape. because I think that this is very interesting.
It is a big class feature for Circle of the Moon Druids.
Well, now it's just a big class thing for druids as a general feature. And
in 3rd edition, it was a thing for druids in general as well.
Yes. And I think Circle of the Moon is also the subclass that they give here, so we'll be able to get into that. But Wild Shape. Okay, so here's how Wild Shape is written in the test material. As a magic action, so an action you take, you transform into a form that you have learned for this feature. You start knowing one form, Animal of the Land, which is detailed in the Wild Shape section later in the class description. You stay in...
I assume Animal of the Land means a creature that does not have a fly or swim speed. We'll find out.
That's something that we're going to look at, but it's a good question to ask. You stay in that form for a number of hours equal to half your druid level, or until you use Wild Shape again, have the incapacitated condition, or die. You can also end Wild Shape early as a bonus action.
That is standard to the current rules for Wild Shape. It is your druid level, half your druid level rounded up to the closest hour.
Okay. Now, while in this form, its game statistics replace yours, and your ability to handle objects is determined by the form's limbs rather than your own. You retain your personality, memories, ability to speak in Wild Shape. You lose access to all your other features, such as the ability to cast spells, which you
and speak. They need to reward it to let people know that they keep their intelligence, wisdom, and intelligence and wisdom of their normal thing. I'm pretty sure, because it says it changes their stats to the animals, but generally speaking, you still keep your mental scores.
I think that actually might be one of the changes. You know what? I think what I'll do is I will skip to the Wild Shape section to actually clarify this.
Cool, because one of the things with that is if, say, you turn into a crow.
Yes.
And suddenly you're as smart as a crow, you're not quite as smart as you were before.
Right. So
that seems like not a good idea.
Okay, so I think that this is probably the big change when it comes to Wild Shape. So I'm going to just read what Wild Shapes are here. When you use your Wild Shape, you transform into a form you've learned for this feature. This section includes 3 forms: Animal of Land, Animal of the Sea, and Animal of the Sky. You pick all of these up over the course of your
yes.
time. As you assume a form, you determine its appearance, selecting an example animal from the form description, selecting another appropriate animal, or choosing a hybrid form that incorporates visual components. The appearance you choose has no effect on the form's capabilities. When choosing an animal's appearance for the form, that animal needn't be the same size as the form. For example, you could choose elephant for the appearance and small for the size, creating a form that resembles a little elephant.
Okay, so it gives you a lot more roleplay option with it, which is cool.
Exactly. So
I'm going to be a tiny elephant.
Yes, exactly.
I think the thing with that is it gives you a lot more roleplay flexibility with it, but it also means that you're going to have a lot of awkward situations where you've made this creature that doesn't exist.
Yeah. So here's where the big change comes in. So Animal of Land. As you said, it's a flightless terrestrial animal.
Yes.
So we could talk about a bear, a deer, a horse, a cat, dog, velociraptor, big rodent, whatever.
Sure.
But we're not using those stats. While in this form, you use the Animal of the Land stat block. So there's a specific stat block here that is specifically for Animal of the Land. You use that stat block. So you have Armor class, which is 10 plus your wisdom modifier. Hit points, you continue to use your hit points and hit dice. And you have a 40-foot speed for climbing and for running. And you have...
The hit dice is different, because usually it was the animal's hit dice.
Right.
So
your strength and dexterity are now equal to your wisdom score. Your con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma use your scores. So your strength and dexterity basically go up to whatever your wisdom score is, because I'm pretty sure it's high.
Or down.
Or down if you're bad at wisdom. as a druid. You're,
That's interesting,
yeah.
but I don't know. It's kind of weird because then it makes it like a catch-all form instead of being like, I'm a bear and I get the attacks and the strength of a bear. It's just like, I'm a tiny elephant.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what your form looks like. It's that you are the animal of the land. So it's this stat block.
Please go on though.
Yeah, no. So you're gonna get dark vision to 60 feet. Languages are just languages that you know, and your proficiency bonus is just equal to yours. Keen senses, you got that for perception checks, and you get an action, 2 actions actually. Bestial Strike. Which is your spell attack modifier is used to hit.
Okay.
And then you get 1 target, reach of 5 feet, a 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier in either bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. You get to choose.
That's neat.
And then you get a multi-attack where you get to make it, if you're 5th level or higher, you get to make 2 bestial strikes.
That's essentially just a fighter getting the extra attack, so that makes sense.
Right, exactly. I guess while I'm here, I might as well tell you a little bit of Animal of the Sea and Sky, because...
So those ones are animals that would have fly speeds or animals that would have swim speeds.
Right.
Wild shape as is now, that is based on the level you are, and you gain abilities that transform into animals that have swim or burrow or fly speeds as you increase in level.
Yeah. For the most part, the Animal of the Sea and Animal of the Sky are very similar stat blocks, except, of course, their functionality, where the Animal of the Sea has a swim speed of 40 feet, and your Animal of the Sky has a fly speed of 40 feet. The only other big thing is that you no longer get strength equal to your wisdom score, you just use your score for strength. But your dexterity still equals your wisdom while you're in that. You still get bestial strikes of varying degrees. The Animal of the Sky only has a 1d4 for a hit. And your Beast of the Sea only has 1d6. So they might not hit as hard, but, you can at least go underwater as an Animal of the Sea, and you can fly.
Does Animal of the Sea get any kind of breathing?
It's amphibious, so you can breathe air and water.
Does it have a duration for it? Oh, it's amphibious, so it can breathe both? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it can breathe both. So the only thing that is limiting is how long you can be in that form.
Okay.
Basically. And Animal of the Sky also gets flyby, so you don't provoke opportunity attacks when you fly out of reach of an enemy. So
there you go.
There's a fun thing. Just keep pecking. Just keep pecking as a pteranodon or something. So that's the big thing I think changes with the druid, is that you're not taking the stat blocks of individual animals. You're taking this specific stat block for your animal of the land or sea.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how other players and DMs and people are going to react to that specifically, or have reacted to it. It's interesting. Like, it makes it a lot less optimized for, hey, I'm going to play a bear.
Yeah.
It lets you have a lot more roleplay opportunities, but it also feels kind of bland at the same time to me.
Right, because no matter what form you take, it's going to have the same functionality.
Right, whereas before I could say, hey, I'm gonna be a spider.
And you're gonna have specific spider abilities.
Right,
like
I'd either have a poison, or I could climb on the walls, and sticky feet,
Yeah.
And this means that I wouldn't be able to do that.
Right, because it's not specifically in there, so you could take the form of a spider, but it doesn't magically make you be able to...
Right, unless your GM says, yeah, no, spiders can climb walls, ants can climb walls, you can do that.
Right, but in the rules as written, yeah, it's not specific to that. Although the Beast of the Land does have an inherent climb speed. So there is some climbing ability regardless.
Sure, climb speed doesn't necessarily mean sticking to the walls.
Stick on the walls, right, exactly. A lot of this is probably stuff you already know, like at first level you're going to have Druidic. So you learn the secret language of druids. Spellcasting. So out of the gate, in similar fashion to some of the other spellcasters, you can prepare 2 0-level spells and 2 first-level spells of your choice from the primal spell list. Out of the gate, they usually have Cure Wounds, Druidcraft, Produce Flames, and Thunderwave.
Yeah, good spells, so.
Yeah, those are good spells. You might as well take them. Second level, you get Nature's Aid. So you learn 2 ways to use your channel nature. Healing Blossom and Wild Companion. Healing Blossom is as a magic action, you channel healing energy that appears as blooming flowers. Choose a point within 30 feet of yourself, and spectral flowers appear for a moment in a 10-foot radius sphere, centered on that point. Then roll a number of d4s equal to your wisdom modifier, and add the dice together. The total is the number of hit points you can distribute to the creatures in that sphere. You decide the number of hit points that are restored to each of those creatures, deducting the healing from the total. That seems like it makes druids a really good healer. Because if my wisdom modifier is 3, let's say at 2nd level, that's potentially 12 points of healing that I can do as just a channel nature ability. So
it's not bad.
No. And then Wild Companion, where you can summon a nature spirit that assumes an animal form to aid you. Is that
a spell or is that a ability?
This is your channel nature ability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can summon a nature spirit that assumes an animal form. As a magic action, you can expend the use of your channel nature and cast a find familiar spell without material components. When you cast the spell in this way, this familiar is a fae, and it disappears when you finish a long rest. So, basically, you got a wizard's familiar now.
But temporary.
But it disappears when you finish a long rest, yeah.
Yeah, so it's temporary.
It's temporary. But I guess you could use it again once you get your channel nature spell back.
Sure, yeah. I'm just wondering what the point of a temporary familiar is, if it's fae.
I don't know, to act as your therapist.
I would not trust a fae as a therapist.
Yeah, well, it's to each his own. 3rd level, you would get your druid subclass. We'll talk about Circle of the Moon in a little bit. 4th, you get a feat. 5th, you get Might of the Land, which connection to the land deepens, empowering the animal of the land form for your wild shape, and you unlock your climb speed and your multi-attack. You get a subclass feature at 6th, Aquatic Form, where you get the animal of the sea at 7th. 8th, you get a feat. 9th, you get your aerial form, so now you can be an animal of the sky. We talked about that already. Subclass feature at 10th, Tiny Critter at 11th. You gain the ability to become tiny. And when you transform into a wild shape, you can make it tiny. And if you do so, you can stay in that form no longer than 10 minutes. And the damage you deal for that in that form is halved.
Why is it only 10 minutes? That seems a little stupid.
Because I don't know. You have to concentrate on shrinking down an even smaller degree.
I don't. That's a little bit weird to me. 10 minutes, but you're expending a wild shape.
Specifically, 10 minutes. You can be a tiny critter, and then you have to be big again. So there's that. 12th is a feat. 13th, alternating forms. You can now rapidly shift between a wild shape form and your normal form. If you're in a wild shape form, you can switch to your normal form as a bonus action, and then switch back into wild shape within the next minute as a bonus action.
Well, that's nice, because then it doesn't take up your... I assume it's just the same time period.
Neither switch expends a use of wild shape. So neither of those. Yeah.
Switching back and then switching back, switching to one form and then back to the other.
Yeah. So there you go. As long as it's in the minute. So that's good. I can turn back to a person, and then I can cast a spell, I guess. But then I can switch back as a bonus action on the next one. Another subclass feature at 14th, Wild Resurgence at 15th. When you use your wild shape, primal magic radiates from you, allowing you to use Healing Blossoms as part of the same use of channel nature. Okay. 16th is feat. 17th, Beast Spells. You can cast spells in any wild shape form.
Yeah, because you can't really talk in wild shape.
Right. When you use such a form, you can perform somatic and verbal components, and you don't need to provide free material components. If a spell consumes its material component, you can't cast that spell while in the wild shape form. I kind of eschew material components in general when we're talking about spellcasting, and I think most people do anyway, but I'm not going to search around my bag to see if I have a bit of carrot and a loose hair from an orc or something. You know, it's just that never made sense to me. But at 18th level you get Archdruid. So whenever you roll initiative, you regain one use. Yeah, whenever you become an initiate, whenever you roll initiative, you regain one use of your channel nature. In addition, the primal magic that you wield causes you to age more slowly. For every 10 years that pass, your body ages only 1.
Yes.
And then the 19th is a feat, and 20th you do the epic boon thing that we talked about before. So that's the basics. Now we get to talk about Circle of the Moon, everybody's favorite druid subclass.
Allegedly.
Probably. Maybe. Circle of the Moon draws on the magic of the moon to transform themselves and to guard the wilds. Their order gathers under the full moon to share news and perform rituals. Changeable as the moon, a druid of the circle might prowl as a gray cat one night, soar over the treetops as an eagle the next day, and crash through the undergrowth in bear form to drive off a trespassing monster. The wild is in the druid's blood.
Okay. Yay, bloody wilds.
Oh, that sounds like Cocaine Bear all over again. Let's make that. I'm going to
make my next druid be a Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, I want my druid to just be Cocaine Bear now.
And since you can pick their appearance, it's just
you can do it.
White line underneath his nose.
White line underneath it. Perfect. Let's do that. Okay, so level 3, you get Combat Wild Shape. You have learned magical techniques that allow you to transform quickly and to channel magical protection while transformed, giving you these benefits. Abjuration spells. While you're in wild shape form, you can cast any spell you currently have prepared from the Abjuration School, provided the spell doesn't require a material component. So that's a 3rd level ability, right there. So you get that pretty early on with this. Quick Attack. You can use Unarmed Strike as a bonus action. And Swift Transformation. You can use your wild shape as a bonus action or magic action, but no more than once on a turn. 6th level. Elemental Wild Shape. Channeling ancient lunar magic, you imbue your wild shape form with the power of the elemental planes.
I thought you were going to say friendship.
That too. It's Captain Planet. Whenever you assume a wild shape form, choose one of the following damage types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. That's cool. While in that form, you have resistance to the chosen damage type, and the form's Bestial Strike can deal damage of that type rather than its normal type, with you choosing between the types when you hit. With you choosing between the types when you hit?
You can just choose it at will.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Screw your resistances. I'll just do whatever damage and try them all.
Yeah.
Your form also displays signs of the chosen damage type. For example, if you choose fire, your fur in wild shape might flicker with harmless flames. You choose the details. Oh, I can finally play Charizard. I'm just Charizard now.
There you go.
Or Bulbasaur.
There you go.
I'm happy. 10th level, you have Elemental Strike. Elemental forces imbue your attacks. When you deal damage with your Bestial Strike, the target takes an extra 1d6 damage of the type you chose from Elemental Wild Shape. This extra damage increases to 2d6 when you reach 17th level in this class. That's a lot of fire damage, Charizard. And then 14th level, 1000 Forms. You have learned to use lunar magic to alter your physical form in innumerable ways. You always have the Alter Self spell prepared, and you can cast it without expending a spell slot. It does not count against the number of spells you have prepared. So,
nice.
There you go.
There you go.
You can be any form you want, pretty much, at that point.
You can bear if you want to.
You can leave your pants behind, which is kind of hard if you are a bear to wear the pants.
You don't know that.
I mean, Bear and Breakfast suggests that it is not comfortable for the bears to be wearing. Anyway, so that is the druid from the test material. I have not played a druid, so I don't know how different this is from the druid of 5e. Does this sound particularly different? I mean, Wild Shape definitely seems like a whole new thing.
No, it sounds about the same. They're just blanketing it vaguely. It sounds pretty decent, pretty on point with the current druid. A little bit different here and there, obviously with the wild shape and some of the other ways you can do things, I guess. On the whole, it sounds pretty decent.
Sure.
The 10 minutes for the tiny critter is a bit weird.
Yeah.
It's very specific.
Yeah, it seems like somebody in the dev team was like, oh, if they're a tiny critter, could they get through small space? We might need to put a time limit on how long they can be in a small space.
Let the DM deal with it if they get through small spaces.
I see, for me personally, if I was making a change to that, you can be a tiny critter for as long as you could be any other creature. Like, if you have a duration period where you can be in a beast form, just let him be a tiny critter. It doesn't seem like it's OP to be a tiny critter.
No, your damage is nerfed and your AC is just up the ass. That's the only real bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And I can get
Just
into
hard to
small
hit.
spaces. What's the point? Maybe, possibly.
I'm a microscopic elephant.
I'm a tiny elephant. You know that there's going to be people that are going to want to make tiny elephants.
Tiny pink pachyderm.
Yep, perfect. Just do that. I could understand that if you might have a problem with people, like, switching between them all the time, but I don't think people are going to be constantly switching to a tiny critter.
I don't think you're gonna be a bear and then turn into a tiny critter at the end of your attack phase so no one can hit you.
Right.
You don't have enough use as a wild shape for that.
The other thing that I would suggest, if I were looking at this, is when it comes to the animal shapes, so your animal of the land, of the sea, and sky, is depending on how you wanted to build, if there were maybe a couple different stat blocks that might actually help with some of the stuff you're talking about, like how the spider can climb on walls. Like, maybe there could be a couple different types of animal of the land.
Or maybe I want to turn into a cheetah.
Yeah.
Maybe I just want to go all out speed. You know, there are reasons to do different animals. Like, an example from when I played my druid, I would occasionally turn to a horse. Horse has very good land movement speed and can carry the other person in the party.
Yes.
So you could still technically do this, but you're not getting any bonus to movement that a horse would have.
Maybe what you could do is you could have like animal of the land based on either speed, might, or agility or something like that, and so that you could cover different usefulness the kind of things for each one depending on what you were trying to achieve. And Sky and Sea, similar things, like if you're doing offensive, defensive builds, speed builds, something like that, you know. Just to kind of give it a little bit more flexibility in terms of building it, and might thematically make more sense when you choose your animal form, even though you don't have to limit it to it. But, you know, if you're gonna say, I want to be a horse, and maybe take the stat block specifically for speed so that you can go faster as a horse.
Right. Kind of like if you're doing your animal of the air, maybe you want to be a really fast bird, or something that, you know, pterodactyl. You know, something that has really good talons one time, but a different time you'd like to be a hummingbird because they've got perfect flight.
Right.
You know, they can just hover there. So maybe you just want to hover.
Right.
You know, so they're different forms for different reasons, which is the thing that makes wild shape like multi-purpose. Because I've used wild shape for spying on things. Well, not spying, but like gathering information. Because you can just go somewhere and just be like, I'm a cat.
I'm a cat now.
And you can just be a cat. I've used turning into a spider, climbing up a wall, and escaping a prison cell.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think that just, especially because the druid is sort of known for, like, that's a class feature for the druid. That's a very specific
that's a huge thing.
Yeah, is being able to have that connection to nature so that it can change into animals. Is that limiting it then to basically these three archetypes that you get over the course of time that have the same functionality? It seems more limiting, even though, like, the beasts themselves, like, when you're looking at it, they seem pretty potent. Like, I'm gonna give them that. Your strength and dexterity, you know, get your wisdom scores, and you get your dark vision, and, you know, you get a lot of good stuff here. But it also limits some of the functionality of what you might want to do in different situations, and how you might want to build that out. So I'd like to see it maybe a little bit more customization in that aspect, but hey. Besides that, though, everything else seems perfectly fine. I don't see
Yeah.
any problems with this. The channel nature thing seems kind of cool. Gives you a couple options. But I guess I would pass the question on to everybody else. What do you think of the 1D&D version of a druid, and what needs to change or adapt from what we have here? Because I don't know how close this is going to be to the final version, but I imagine most of this is going to stay. So,
hopefully a couple things tweaked here and there, but we'll see.
We'll see. There's time. Wizards is looking for feedback right now, so if you know of anything, now's the time to tell them. We'll talk about the Paladin on the next episode and see how that's doing. I've not played Paladin before, but Alex has.
I don't know.
But it's been a while, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it is next time when we talk about it, though.
Yeah. There we go. We finished our campaign, Alex.
Good. We killed the big bad evil guy. We knew his weakness. It was...
Garlic?
Garlic. It was redacted.
It was garlic bread.
Garlic bread? He went to Olive Garden.
He went to Olive Garden? Damn it. Too bad. Sorry. You should have known. Vampires never go to Olive Garden, because there you are not part of the family. So, Alex, if anyone would like to learn more about garlic bread and how you can use it to fight vampires, where could they go?
You can use garlic bread over at totalpebbleknockdown.com.
You certainly can, and when you go there, you can find some extra bonus features on our Patreon. You can also find some of the other projects that we do over there. You can also find us on every podcast app that is known to mankind. So please rate and review and subscribe to any of those that you use. And you can also find us on social media. I am at Titanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and our show is over at Pebble Knockdown.
So come and check us out over there. And so for yet another episode of Total Pebble Knockdown, I hope that you enjoyed this and that you have not transformed into a blobfish. But if you do, I guess that it does technically count as one of your wild shapes. Is there a could I be a blobfish as an animal of the sea? Probably.
Probably, yeah.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy as a blobfish. Wouldn't you?
No.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. Blobfishes and all. Bye for now.
Bye.